Hello, and welcome to Main Sequence Craft Time. That's copyrighted. So, we're working on the star project, taking our constellations, making them with the HR diagrams, looking at stellar evolution, just get an idea of how perspective works with stars. So, I know there was some confusion, and I'm hoping this will help clear up any confusion when making the project. So, what you needed to send to your teacher was a copy of your constellation, big enough to fill your page. The purpose of that is to get some vertical measurements and horizontal measurements to help give your constellation some scale. So on my page, and I'll leave this as an example and take some pictures, I've gone ahead and measured all of the horizontal and vertical from my constellation. So there's a couple ways to approach it. The one I found the simplest and I think will work the best, again, if you have your own way, that's fine, is just to measure from the edge of the paper. So again, that's why you want that really big constellation. So we're going to work on Rigel, which is one of the feet of Orion. So we want a vertical measurement, so we end up getting the bead length to hang from. So I measured from the top of the sheet down to the star, which was 24 centimeters. And so eventually I will cut one of these beads in string to be 24 centimeters long, so it should end up somewhere around here, to hang from here. So the vertical measurement from the top of the page to the foot will get you your string length. Now you also want to take a horizontal measurement. So I measured from the edge of the page to Rigel, and that ended up being 8 centimeters. So I cut my overall finished project to be as wide as I needed it, essentially as wide as a sheet of paper, so I could use the same measurements. So that made things a little easier. If you want to ultimately cut it down, make it smaller, work in a smaller scale, you can do that, but this way everything's set standard at 8.5 by 11. So I found my measurements. I have my vertical and my horizontal. So what that will end up giving me, it will allow me to make my scale. So you can see on the other stars I have my horizontal measurements, but to get this you need to know the light year of your star, and we got that through our research. So I'm going to plot Rigel on here so I can move on to the next step, and this would be much easier if I didn't have beads on it already, but I was working on this project and decided to make this video. So I know my horizontal measurement from the edge of the paper, so I'm measuring over just 8 centimeters. It doesn't matter where right now. I'm just starting with 8 centimeters and making a mark, so I know where 8 centimeters is off the paper. Now Rigel is 773 light years away from Earth, and in the scale of the project, every light year is 1 millimeter. So it'll be 7.7 centimeters in the long run. So from the top, that is where I'm getting my measurement from. So I'm measuring from the top of my paper, 700 millimeters. So right here. So I made my mark. Mark it as Rigel so I don't forget. So it's 773 light years to get to this point, 8 centimeters over. And so again, that helps give us a scale. So while Rigel and, I'm going to say Scythe, look like they're the same distance, you know, two-dimensionally, actually they're not too far off. They're just a little bit off. So this one will end up hanging here, which two-dimensionally looks the same. But if you rotate it, it ends up hanging over here. So this no longer looks like Orion. So the vertical measurement on your piece of paper gets you this. The horizontal measurement gets you this way on your paper. The light years that you researched gets you running this way. So it gets your beads hanging the way they are. And ultimately what I decided with bead choice color was based on the HR diagram. So how hot and how luminous it was, I looked up on the HR diagram. So for example, Betelgeuse is a giant, a red giant, so it's got this red shape or red color to it, so that way I can distinguish it from my other stars. Whereas Mesa Scythe, Rigel, they're all blue giants, so they have blue stars. And then the other ones are main sequence white stars. So that's what affected my color choice. I do want to show you just some suggestions for when you're cutting your beads, is to leave the string on it first. So I went ahead, strung my bead, and I'm going to double knot it because I like to live on the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. That didn't happen. That was all special effects. It was amazing. So I tie my string. I'm going to double knot it eventually. So I have my ruler. I have my vertical measurement from my picture, and that's 24 centimeters. So as long as you're consistent, that's what we're looking for. I would not pull the string super tight, because then once it relaxes, your measurement will shrink. So I find 24 centimeters, I take a pen, I mark my string so I can find where 24 centimeters was, and then I cut extra, because you are going to need to tie a knot in the top of it in order to attach it. Or if tape is easier, you can just tape the excess string, but you are going to need some excess string in order to run it through and attach it. So you will end up cutting more than 24 centimeters. So you can see I did that with my other stars. I cut off the excess string, but I attached it through here. So again, this part of the string should equal the vertical measurement. With my excess, I tied in the top here. To poke the holes, I used a pen, and then I pushed it back through the other way because it's easier to go through. If you make too big of a hole, it's not a big deal. There's always tape, and it actually makes it easier to string through, and you can kind of push it down to adjust it. The final step of the project is to make a constellation on the black cardboard, so this way when you hang it behind, you can kind of get a picture of the cardboard, or a picture of the constellation. So I still need to do some adjustments, cutting. I'm going to end up cutting off this excess, like I will cut off the excess of my poster board. But I have it labeled, and then eventually when we shine light behind it, it should look like the constellation. And then you get the idea of what color star it is. So, red giant, white dwarf, where it falls in the main sequence. That's